So let's really talk about this because I believe that this is honestly something that many people probably overlook, like we're like, okay, I don't really understand it, so I'm just gonna move on to the next thing. But because this has always been a scripture that has confused me, I was like, I really need to dive into this. So what God revealed to me was Ecclesiastes 7:16. He reminded me of that scripture because a lot of times, like I mentioned yesterday in our teaching, people that people that are believers, sometimes they account themselves as righteous based on their works and the things that they're doing for God, rather than understanding that God has given us that righteousness. He has blessed us with that gift because of us believing in Jesus Christ. So Ecclesiastes 7:16 says, "Do not be over righteous, neither be over wise. Why destroy yourself?" And this was King Solomon who had written this. And as a reminder, King Solomon was known to have all of this wisdom, to be the most wise of them all. And this is so important for us to remember as believers, because when we try to be over righteous, we actually are destroying ourselves, and we put ourselves in this position where we are wondering, like, why is it that I cannot seem to live up to a certain standard? And that is because God, He never called us to live according to a certain standard that we are trying to live by. We are always trying to do good works. And if we fail, then we feel like, God has forgotten us, or God is just going to, cast us away. But that's not the case at all. So when we look at the scripture where it says all wrongdoing is sin, and there is sin that does not lead to death, that is truly just reminding us that not all sin leads to death. And like the example that I gave you guys earlier in the group chat, I believe it was just about being rebellious to a word that the Lord has spoken to you. So if you know that God has told you to do something specifically and you don't do it, that is you being rebellious against God, and that is sinning, but that is not going to lead to death. Well, depending on what it is that He told you to do or not do. But ultimately, it's not going to lead to death. And I think this is how many believers actually do destroy themselves, when they try to be overly righteous, where they are trying to basically win over their salvation. They're trying to do all these good works and praising themselves for the good works that they are doing, rather than understanding that it is the Spirit of God who has blessed us with the ability to be righteous. It is not based on the things that we are doing on our own. So I really do love this scripture as well. So Ecclesiastes 7:16, do not be over righteous, neither be over wise. Why destroy yourself? And I understand from that perspective as well, because I remember when, this was like when I was first starting to really live my life for Christ, and I was going to these churches and listening to these teachings about what it means to be a believer and how we should be living. And when I saw that it was difficult for me to live according to those standards, I thought that there was something wrong with me. And some churches even say that if you are a believer, then you will basically never ever sin again in your life. And that is truly not the case. And having that expectation upon yourself is just dangerous, because that is not even a standard that God has placed upon our lives to begin with. So I hope that you guys do understand that scripture now as well, because that always had me stumped. I was always so confused about this, but it definitely makes more sense when looking at it that way. So let's just start.